That more thoughtful than angry clickbait, able to discuss the world's first superhero in comics, film, TV, and more. It's the Super Maniacs, and we're gonna have a super time today talking about a super bad movie. That is Superman 3. As Mike here with me likes to call it a Superman 3 starring Richard Pryor and featuring Superman.
Yeah, that's one. My other name is the Richard Pryor Superman Spectacular, because it's not a Superman movie.
But it is a Richard Lester directed Richard Pryor comedy.
Yes, and I'm going to use comedy with quotey fingers.
This makes me laugh.
I only laugh at one joke in this entire movie, and it still kills me every time. And I still laugh again. I did again laugh at it in this movie, but we'll get to that when we talk about it.
Yeah, well,
oh my God.
I am excited to dive into this in just a moment, but I do want to mention that as we are counting down the weeks to the release of James Gunn's Superman coming in July, there has been a lot of recent movement as far as like the marketing. There's like a lot of merch that's coming out now, and
Yes.
also it's funny, we're seeing more of some of these Superman characters in trailers for other things. Now there's that Peacemaker season 2 trailer that's showing there's going to be a lot of connective tissue to Superman. That'll be like a month later in August, right? So we have Superman in July, then Peacemaker.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that Peacemaker is jumping right in to the new universe.
Yeah, it looks like I guess they're called the Justice Gang. I guess that's what they're actually called.
I keep hearing different things. I don't know what they're actually called because I can't tell what their symbol's supposed to be.
But the Guy Gardner, Hot Girl, Maxwell Lord trio. I guess we've never seen Sean Gunn as Maxwell Lord in any of the Superman marketing. It's only in that Peacemaker trailer, right?
No, I think we've seen him in like backgrounds of stuff. Like for like when you pause something, you're like, there he is. Like that's the only thing I've heard of him showing up in legit trailers. Everything else is like pictures that people have taken and behind the scene types things.
But yeah, the exciting thing about that though is that it looks like they're going to deal with some multiverse. I don't know, maybe that's like the fan speculation, but the final shot of the trailer is two Peacemakers facing off against each other.
Yeah, I think he wants to make sure he answers the fact that, hey, this is in fact a multi-dimensional thing now because of the fact Peacemaker starts in the Snyderverse and he meets the Justice League of the Snyderverse at the end of the movie or the end of the show. So it's like, okay, well now we have to sort of like, I know like when somebody asks somebody, he's like, well, everything is canon except for that part, I think was what he said essentially.
He did say that in an interview. Yeah, I saw that.
But based on that, maybe he's going to play with the idea that maybe they were already, but we don't know. Like that's the thing, is that at least not until the show comes out.
That almost kind of justifies the creation of this Maxwell Lord team that may or may not be called the Justice Gang. But there's like a pre-Justice League group in the new DCU universe, it would appear.
Yeah, they're like a corporate thing, is what based on with the fact that Maxwell Lord is the one, because I think it's the idea of the way the Justice League International happened,
right?
Type thing. Except the Justice League isn't a thing, so it would make sense to give them a different name if that's the case.
But then in the new continuity, you could just say like, okay, all the events of Peacemaker season 1 happened, except instead of that being Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa that interact with Peacemaker in season 1, you could just be like, oh, that was actually Guy Gardner and Hot Girl. So
yeah, and then there's the connecting tissue with Creature Commandos as well. With Rick
Flag Sr.
Yeah, because I know when he casted Creature Commandos, he said anyone who I've casted in this show will play them in the live action, because he wanted to make sure he could do that, which is why Rick Flag Sr. is in both shows, and so they're supposed to be the same like continuity character.
Yeah, and Rick Flag Sr. is also going to be in Superman in July.
Yes, which is why it's so exciting that like, and he's like apparently the new head of Argus because I guess the Amanda Waller thing still happened. I guess is what I'm thinking, based on how Peacemaker season 1 ended.
Yeah, which is interesting because Creature Commandos season 1 has Waller still in charge of Argus, and that's post Peacemaker season 1 because it has the Diebeard character has his injury that he got in season 1.
Oh, didn't even think about that. Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen then.
I'm sure it all makes sense when it's all out, but it's
Yeah.
exciting to finally see this stuff. I was saying like we've gotten so little, marketing lately this close to the release of the movie, and now we're speaking of that, we have a trailer coming out this week, Wednesday.
Yes, there's also a free mini comic that came out apparently yesterday or today that's sponsored by Milk Bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's about crypto in it, and I read part of it. I didn't get a chance to finish it, but apparently it's pretty short. But it's just like it's definitely an ad for Milk Bones because at one point somebody's feeding a dog a milk bone.
Yeah, I kind of wish that the first story I get with this new depiction of Superman wasn't an advertisement for some corporate product, but
That's where we're at apparently.
as kind of the cool thing about this movie is that I am thinking Gunn is going to address some of these criticisms of kind of the superhero genre and how like, oh yeah, these are just kind of corporate products that are just being like shoved out to the public, and I think he's going to, with the black suit character that we see in the movie, who I don't know, maybe he's Ultraman, maybe he's Parasite, I don't know, maybe he's Bizarro. They haven't officially said. I know there's a lot of theories and some marketing clues as to the identity of the black suit villain of the movie, but I think that might be kind of a commentary on like, oh, you can't just like have like a corporate product Superman who's like made in a lab, who's like, they've done like group testing and stuff like that to come up with like this ideal superhero. It has to be like an actual person with like some heart. And I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm hoping that we get a story along those themes, but that's what it's kind of indicating to me.
There's a lot of different theories I have, especially with based on what stories he's been mentioning over and over again. The biggest being Kingdom Come, that a lot of people are curious how it connects. And that's my theory is basically what you're saying, but the difference is it still has that thing about Kingdom Come where the heroes were getting more angsty.
Right.
They weren't really paying attention to helping people. They were more, selfish and about themselves. I think the idea is that like Superman is around to be the antithesis of that exact thought process. That's like the biggest theory I have because of that story being one of his inspirations for the movie so far.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I can kind of see them tweaking that, whereas in Kingdom Come, that was kind of, the end of Superman's career, or later in his career, I guess I should say, as a superhero, but there's a new generation of heroes that are less heroic, don't have the same values as him, and this might switch that to where, because this is a DC universe that's had metahumans since World War II, or I guess longer, because, there's like Amazonians and, all kinds of ancient DC characters that are probably going to exist in this universe. But it sounds like it might be like Superman at the beginning of his career is entering a world that has these, let's say, less heroic superheroes. And it'll be kind of the beginning of his career is kind of raising the standard of hero in this universe.
Yeah, like he's already entering a very cynical world instead of the world becoming cynical that pushes him away, because that's what Kingdom Come is that after the Joker thing, the world becomes cynical, and so Clark's just like, well, I guess I'm just not going to do this anymore, and that's what causes him to end his career prematurely for a little bit. So it's like doing that, but instead of it being a long time coming that the world became cynical, this world's just already cynical to begin with, I guess.
Which would be a fair reflection of, I think, the reality that we are currently in. So we need a hero. We need like the inspirational character to show up. It's not that like that guy is like faded away. It's that like it feels like he's not here yet.
Yeah, and I get that a lot when I watch. I've been watching a lot of YouTube reacts for stuff lately, mostly because it just passes the time, and it's also sometimes fun to see a person react to something that you're a big fan of. And there's a lot of them that are just like, I just like it when my superheroes murder people. And you're just sitting there like, no.
Yeah, like go read Kingdom Come. Like Mark Waid wrote a story for you.
Yeah, like they just don't seem to understand why people like it's exactly what I'm saying. It's like nobody understands why people like Superman anymore the way they used to, because they're so used to the way the MCU is, where it's like, oh, Captain America shot a bunch of people and threw them through like blender type things, Iron Man, unibeamed a guy in the chest, that sort of thing. And so like the idea of superheroes not killing to them is antiquated. It's the same thing that Zack Snyder says about the superhero thing, where he's like, if you believe that these characters wouldn't kill anybody, it's a fantasy. It's like, yes, that's the point of these characters.
Yeah, Joe Kelly wrote a story for you, Zack Snyder. So
exactly.
But
and there's a whole movie. They made a movie just so for the people who don't feel like reading it. Please watch that movie.
It was Superman versus the Elite is the name of the movie, right?
Yeah.
But the only other news that I want to mention is that the Supergirl movie, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, with what's her name? Millie Alcock from House of the Dragon and Jason Momoa as Lobo. They have wrapped filming on that. So that was fast. I feel like they just started not that long ago. So
yeah, I was very, very surprised that it was that was in the news. They're like, oh, we're done filming. I'm like, oh, I'm just so used to these things like going, oh, we went back, we did a bunch of shoots, or something like that. That's been happening a lot lately, where a movie you're really looking forward to superhero wise is like, well, we filmed it, we're done, we're not done, it's just over. Like what happened with Brave New World. So I'm curious to see if this is the final thing, because even Superman went through a few reshoots from what I hear.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of normal to have, like, you have to do like some pickup shooting or whatever. But yeah, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is slated for June 26th next year. So that movie is only 13 months away. So that'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we've been waiting for so long for Superman that if everything is now in full steam ahead from here on, we might just get a movie a year from here on out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and they're also planning to do that Clayface movie next year. I know that is still in development, but
yeah, we keep hearing. I think we heard that they might be doing another rewrite on it, possibly.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure. Which
is
the
weird. Last thing I heard. Either they had that the Sergeant Rock movie. I couldn't think of the name. I kept wanting to say like Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos, but it's like Sergeant Rock and Easy Company. Yeah. But they had that ready to go, and then they had to scrap that. Like maybe they'll attempt again, but it's like, yeah, we don't. I guess the reason that they gave was like they didn't want to shoot outside in Europe this summer for whatever reason. So
a lot of people just dropped out, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think it would have been a good move. I feel like it's more. Honestly, Sergeant Rock should be a miniseries. I think Sergeant Rock as a miniseries would be really interesting. Like just straight up make Band of Brothers, but in the DC universe.
Exactly. I was about to say the exact same thing. So yeah, I would love that. So maybe that's what we'll get. But anyways, enough DCU talk. Let's go back to 1983 and talk about Richard Lester's sequel to a movie he directed 75% of, Superman 2. This also made me think that no filmmaker has ever done 2 Superman solo movies that they did entirely themselves. Donner directed 1.75 Superman movies, and Lester directed 1.75 Superman movies. But because Superman 2 has some like Donner stuff and some Lester stuff, no one's actually like owned the entire movie and done 2 of them.
No, like even the movies made afterwards, they didn't make Man of Steel is a Superman 1 type thing, and then Batman v Superman isn't a full Superman movie,
right?
So it doesn't really count the same way. And then we know Richard Lester didn't direct Superman 4 either, type of thing. And so what Richard Lester is, this is going to sound really stupid. He's the Gerald Ford of Superman directors.
No, yeah, that makes sense. But go ahead and explain.
Well, for people who don't know, Richard Nixon resigned for various reasons uh, from the presidency, and there so Gerald Ford by default became the new president of the United States, and so he didn't really. He's one of the only presidents that wasn't like voted in like at all. He was just the president.
Yeah, he wasn't even voted in as vice president because he
Exactly.
wasn't Nixon's original VP.
So Richard Lester is the Gerald Ford of directors when it comes to these Superman movies, and it shows really badly in this, because especially this one specifically, because Superman 2, you're like, oh, Superman 2 is a great movie. It's like, yeah, but that's because he was tied down to a script that was already kind of done, and they didn't want to rewrite. They're like, well, we can rewrite some of it, but like not like a shit ton of it, because we already have all these people planned out, all these things set up. So we're just gonna like add a bunch of jokes to this movie, which is the main criticism that Superman 2 has, or at least the theatrical cut. And so Richard Lester and the rest of everybody was like, you know what? We're just gonna make what Richard Lester is known for, because he had made what, A Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, the Beatles movie. I think he did 2 Beatles movies.
Yeah, and so he's a comedy director. So it's like if you had gotten Judd Apatow to make a Batman movie. Like, it's like, why would you do this? But he made people money, so people assumed this was for some reason a great idea because Superman 2 ended up so well. Not understanding why that happened. That was a fluke, because he was already riding on the coattails of what Richard Donner had set up. And then I don't know what happened in the middle of it, but people just decided to forget that they were making a Superman movie.
Yeah, he went back to his slapstick comedy roots, and I think he was probably thrilled to have a very famous, at the time, really hot in their career comedian Richard Pryor on board.
And the reason they got Richard Pryor is such a fucking random thing. He was on The Tonight Show or something like that. And he's like, yeah, I like the Superman movies. If they asked me to be in one, I would. And then they were like, oh my God, we can get Richard Pryor.
But he said that he was like a fan of Superman. He was into the character, and he's done like some comedy. He has a fairly famous one, or perhaps infamous one, a Superman bit that he did in his stand-up routines. But the movie like even opens like all the other Superman movies, like they open in space. They want you to feel like this is like a science fiction epic. And here, like, it opens with like, oh, here's just like a lot of goofy stuff happening in Metropolis. This is going to be a wacky movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it doesn't even open on the wacky part yet. It opens on him. It starts at an unemployment office with Richard Pryor making not even good. I don't even know if they're supposed to be jokes. He's just saying that he didn't work at a place in a long time and they're not going to pay him unemployment. And then I looked through the deleted scenes, and it turns out that scene was longer. But what they did was that they had way more slapstick jokes in the background that was going on. Like there's a scene in the deleted scenes where one of the people in the office is eating, and there's a sign directly behind them that says no food, no outside food inside of the unemployment office, basically. And there's another one where like a guy has a dog, and it says like dog walker required or something on the sign. Like, it's like dumb little jokes that are like, what the fuck is this? Like, if all that stuff was in the theatrical cut, I'm sure like even more people would be confused as to what movie they walked into, because it starts with Gus, and it's very heavily about Gus for what, 5-10 minutes before the slapstick intro happens.
Like, if this movie like came on HBO or Cinemax or something, and you just turned on the TV and flipped it onto the channel and you were watching this, it would take you a long time before you even realized you were watching a Superman movie.
Exactly. And then when the credits start happening, they're kind of just there. Like, you know what I mean? Where they're just like, there's no real fanfare to what the credits are. It just says, oh, by the way, this is Superman 3. Is basically that's what it does in the middle of this slapstick. Let's talk about the slapstick sequence. The slapstick sequence is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life, because it starts with the characters who is a main character in the movie. A blonde woman walks by some guy. He gets distracted, and then it causes like a Rube. What is the word I'm looking for? Rube Goldberg? Is that what it is? I think that's the name of it. Rube Goldberg machine.
I'm not sure. I don't know what that is.
It's just whenever there's a machine that like you flip something and then it's supposed to hit a ball and the ball hits a switch.
Oh yeah.
There's a name for it. I think it's called
like that board game Mousetrap.
Yes, basically. Like
yeah.
There's a term for it. I think it's Rube Goldberg because
okay.
it's named after the guy or something.
I know what you're talking about.
And so it's that's what it does. It's a series of events that causes a series of events. And so again, the deleted scenes has a longer version of the sequence, by the way. And it has there's one that makes me laugh. That actually did make me laugh. So it causes like a thing to get it causes like a set of penguins to get set on fire, a guy to crash, and water starts filling his car somehow, and nobody can open the door, and like a bunch of people, like a blind guy ends up with instead of his dog, like ends up with one of those like there's a lot of dumb shit that happens as it progresses. And then eventually Superman sees it, and he does one thing, by the way, in the theatrical cut. He shows up, opens the sunroof to save the guy, and that's literally the only time you see Superman for a lot of the movie. Although, like I said, the deleted scene has one extra part to it, which is that there's more that happens that causes a kid who's on a seesaw to get launched into a tree.
I didn't know about that.
And it made me laugh so hard when I saw it. And then Superman comes and rescues the kid from getting launched into a tree. But it shows how like ridiculous this whole thing was. Like, again, if you guys get a chance, please go to YouTube because some of the stuff is on some of the DVDs. This is the same with the other movies. Is that some of the movies don't have all the deleted scenes in them, but people have found them over the years and made compilations for them. There's one that's like I think it's like 20 minutes long, and it actually has a space intro, or it actually has the like the way it's like it starts in space and has the credits and has the Superman theme. It actually has that as one of the deleted scenes. It's the actual like normal intro that you would have normally gotten from Superman. And it's really strange that any of this exists. Apparently, it's from the TV edit because there's a TV edit of the movie, and there was a version of it released around the time Superman Returns came out called the Deluxe Edition that had a lot of these scenes as deleted scenes within them. I didn't check if the Blu-ray had them because I don't want to subject my PS5 to more Superman 3. But yeah, that's like. We haven't even got past the slap. So the slapstick happens. It immediately cuts to Gus Gorman again. And him getting a job. He's a computer genius, I guess, because reasons.
And this is like at a time when computers were still a very new and exotic technology. So this guy who's like, oh, I guess I just have natural programming skills. This is like, oh, okay, I guess that's how computer programming works. What do I know?
This movie is the ultimate one of those movies that just goes, how did that happen? Computers. And then there's no questions. There's no follow-up questions. We can control everything with computers, no matter what it is. It could be like the stupidest thing on the planet, and somehow Gus Gorman can type in something and then it'll happen. And then he decides to do something that is very it's actually something my math teacher brought up as an example of something years ago, which is why people knew I was a giant nerd because I corrected him that it was Superman 3 and not Superman 4 when he did that. Nice. He had it's this thing where it's like there's half cents that happen and stuff. Most people don't normally notice it. The few people who do, a lot of times when you do it, if you're at a gas station, you'll see like .999, not just like 2 nines. So it's like a half cent. And so he decides to steal this money using his computer, which also, by the way, is a plot point of Office Space.
That's right. That was the plot of Office Space. So.
And I think they bring up Superman 3 in the movie too. I think it's been a while since I've seen Office Space, but yeah, that's what happens. And so Gus Gorman, I actually looked up how much his embezzlement thing would have done in today's money. It's like $270,000 is what he ends up taking in his first try.
That's a pretty nice check to get.
Yeah, and then, it cuts back to Superman, and Lois Lane shows up for, 5 seconds?
Right. The rumor is that the Salkins and her were on bad terms after they fired Richard Donner on Superman 2. So in retaliation, they give her a small part in this movie. Although I think some of them have denied that happened. So I don't know.
They've all denied it. It's like it's in a bunch of I think it's in the commentaries too. They deny it never happened. Like we just wanted to go in a different direction is what they claim. And the same with Gene Hackman, because that's the story about Gene Hackman is he didn't come back as Lex Luthor because
they probably
of that.
didn't pay him enough. But
there's
no
honestly,
way they could have wanted these villains instead of Gene Hackman, though.
Yeah, but honestly, the explanation makes more sense that Gene Hackman gave, which is like, I was busy. I had other movies to make, and I didn't want to be like, he didn't want to be, he didn't want
Typecast.
Superman movies to just be Lex Luthor stories.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, look, you can use somebody else. I don't want to be like a horror movie villain who keeps coming back. Is apparently what he said. Which honestly, this is Gene Hackman at the height of his power, kind of thing. I believe him, to be honest. For all I know, he's like, look, I was mad that happened, but I had other shit to do. Because Gene Hackman's notorious, or he was notorious for being really hard to work with sometimes. And so I honestly have a feeling that even if things went well, he still would not have came back. Like he was just like, look, I got other movies to do, and he did. I'm sure he made plenty of stuff during that time.
Yeah, I'm sure he was busy in the early '80s. But instead, the villain that we got, it's funny that he almost kind of more represents the corporate billionaire Lex, which hadn't yet been established in the comics.
Yeah, he was more like Morgan Edge was at that point.
Yeah.
For a lot of people who don't know, Morgan Edge was he kind of was what Lex becomes eventually, which was the corporate, not even really a supervillain. He was just like a corrupt businessman type of thing. And so that's how I always saw it. It's like this movie would have been kind of interesting if they just made him Morgan Edge type of thing.
Totally. They should have made the Robert Vaughn character Morgan Edge, and then they should have still used Brainiac instead of Richard Pryor, instead of being like, let's get like the hot comedian who's really famous right now. There's already a computer science type. I guess at the time Brainiac wasn't. He was more of just kind of a mental character.
Yeah, he was still he was still just an alien. Like he was a green guy with like electronics in his head. The fully computerized Brainiac was a John Byrne idea, which a lot of people at the time hated, which I didn't know until like way later on. And then now he's kind of both. He did I think a lot of versions of that do both.
I think actually Marv Wolfman came up with the robotic Brainiac before Crisis.
Actually, you're right, because that wouldn't make sense. How whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, it wouldn't make sense if he wasn't. Yeah, you're right. Sorry,
but it wasn't something that was around in '83, I don't think, or it would have been like brand new at the time.
Yeah, because Crisis I think was in the middle of being made at that time.
Yeah, because it started in '85. So yeah, they were still they were probably still scripting that and stuff. So,
but yeah, at that point, Brainiac was just a super intelligent guy with a monkey, which I would have watched.
I'm curious what they would have done though with Mixia-Spitalik if they had actually done that. Like you could have made the evil Superman. That would have made a lot more sense if you had this imp from the fifth dimension with godlike powers who can do things like that.
Yeah, there was apparently it's in the commentary that one of the Salkins wrote a treatment for it, which is that Brainiac, it would have had Supergirl in it as well. That Brainiac would have found Supergirl and then raised her the way Kent's raised, which hysterically enough, My Adventures of Superman ended up doing that.
I was about to say that. I just connected those dots as you were describing it.
And so they did that, but the problem was, the Salkinds being the Salkinds, not really caring that much about comic continuity. It was like, what if we made Superman and Supergirl love interests? And they're like, no, we don't want that. And we don't know what they would have done with Mr. Mixia-Spitalik, or Mixel-Spit. I can't even remember how the Super Friends said him. I just know that Alex Ross prefers the Super Friends pronunciation.
I say it the way that they say it on Superman the Animated Series, because that was the first time I heard someone say it out loud. I
knew both of. I used to know both of them because I was a big fan of the Super Friends growing up. Because I think it's Pitalik. I think is the other way. Because I think I think Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, also use that pronunciation, Pitalik. And Alex Ross hates the Superman animated series pronunciation. Like, according to Bruce Timm, he gets into arguments with Alex Ross about it all the time. But no, I'm very curious as to what they would have done with him, because nobody's really done him correctly in live action, in my opinion. Smallville did this really weird thing with him. The Supergirl show gets really close, in my opinion, but doesn't really fully commit to it.
Supergirl was an improvement from Smallville, though.
Yes, and I know that Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman kind of, it gets really close. It also gets really close, but none of them do the way the cartoons do. But that's only because you can do so much more with a cartoon than you can with budget wise than you can with live action. So that's fair. I get that. And then especially in 1983, I don't see that working, to be honest. But honestly, if Richard Lester had did it, that might have been a better choice for him to do, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But the storyline that we get with the three baddies, I guess, you have Ross Webster and his sister Vera Webster, and then I didn't know that this was an actual thing. I thought it was something they made up for the movie, but I googled psychic nutritionist, and there's people in real life who are a psychic nutritionist. I thought they were just trying to be like, what's like the dumbest like granola crunchy new age 80s thing we could come up with. But
I thought it was him just making up a profession for her, to not just say, oh, this is the woman I'm sleeping with, by the way.
Lorelei Ambrosia, who was the hot blonde woman who causes all the chaos in the beginning. And that opening sequence that you were describing, that always confused me as a kid. I didn't understand like the joke of like, oh, look, this lady is so hot that she causes this massive disaster to happen. I always thought like, oh, is there like a villain who's causing all these things to go on? That always just baffled me as a kid.
Even as an adult, it's baffling because it doesn't make any, like, the things that happen don't make any sense for just being confused by her the one time. Although it happens again, like later on in the same sequence, by the way. I'm not gonna like I think another person sees her and then he gets, I remember what had happened. Another person sees her and then Clark stops somebody from something happening, but it causes a pie to hit the first guy who got confused by her.
Right. Yeah, he hits someone in the face to like save her or something.
As like it's a comeuppance for the guy who first got distracted. It's like, come on, dude, that guy's been getting his ass kicked like the whole fucking opening sequence. And then the explanation for why the sister calls her brother Bubba was cut from the movie because it's in the deleted scenes. Like it's a really quick line too. It's just like, oh, when she was younger, she didn't know how to say brother, so she called me Bubba, and it was the last cute thing she ever did, is what he says, because they make fun of his sister's looks through the entire movie.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the actress who played her, because it's like, oh yeah, are just gonna talk about you like you're hideous for 2 hours.
Well, yeah, like he walks in, he's like, "Oh, I didn't know your mom was here." Is the first thing Richard Pryor says about her. And then there's plenty of other times where there's another line that he says, or that caught me off guard because I forgot he had said it, which is just that, like, let a man handle you because it's never going to happen again or something, is what he says. And you're just like, I'm sorry, what did he say? And it's just full of stuff like that. And then the blonde lady has these moments where she'll drop her accent and then say something really smart. And you think it's going to go somewhere, but it never does. It's just her doing that to show that she's actually smarter than she is, but it never really, I don't feel like there's like a payoff for that legitimately, if that makes sense.
But even now, when I watch this movie and all the wacky stuff that's happening in the first half of it, I do like Christopher Reeve. He's still so perfect as Clark and as Superman. I like the way that he looks in this movie. He's a little bit older than he was in the first two. But like even during like all that wacky shit in the beginning, like when you see him with like the suit and the hat and full on Clark Kent, it's always like, oh well, at least we have some good acting in this.
That's the thing, is Christopher Reeve is still giving it his all the entire time. This is also the tan suit Clark Kent, which is he only wears tan suits in this entire, actually not only, for the majority he wears a tan suit instead of his his black and blue suits that he has throughout the first two movies. And so it's kind of jarring almost at first because you're so used to what he wears normally prior to that. And then eventually, you know, at the end of the movie, he wears like a normal one again.
I think I like that though. I think it made it feel a little bit more modern, or like modern with air quotes. Like it made it feel more 80s and less 70s.
Yes, which is very true. And also there's a lot of actual good stuff going on with Clark's story about his connection to Smallville with Lana Lang, played by the great Annette O'Toole.
Yeah, she's the arguably the best part of this movie, and arguably one of the best, maybe even the best parts of Smallville. I love her in both.
She is so good in Smallville. It's a shame that they didn't do a scene together in Smallville before he passed. She asked if it would be possible, but they didn't have Chris for too long.
I would have loved that. Oh my god, I would have loved that so much.
Yeah, she kept saying she would have loved to do it, but they only had Chris for so long apparently at the time, and they couldn't figure out a way of writing two of them in the room together based on what the story was, at least at the time. But although they wanted to, because he would have, before he died, he was supposed to be in more of the show.
Yeah, they had him set up to be a heavily used recurring character, but
yeah, and so instead they replaced her with Margot Kidder, actually, of all things. But there's a great plot of him maybe trying to like be like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna try to maybe date Lana Lang, you know, the one that got away, type of thing. And then they even bring back Brad from Superman 1, who was her ex-boyfriend.
I don't know if I ever knew. I've watched these movies all my life, and I don't know if I ever connected the dots that the bully in Superman the movie is the same character we see here. You had mentioned it to me at some point earlier, but I don't know if I ever connected those dots until you brought it up.
See, most people don't, because it's not the same actor for But that, you know, that wasn't the same actor.
But none of them are either. Like all of their yearbook pictures. I guess they just got like the act, like they were like, okay, Chris, Annette, give us your like, what's a picture of you when you were 17, and we'll see the movie.
Because even the guy who plays Brad, like that's a picture of him, probably from when he played football, type of thing. And they probably added like the word Smallville or something to him. And he's great. He is so weird. He is just like, he's kind of just there, and he's a crazy person who keeps like calling Lana at random moments of the day and showing up being like, hi, you want to sleep with me? Just over and over again. Like that's his entire arc, by the way. He has nothing else going on.
It is sad to me how relatable this movie from 1983 still is in the 21st century to my experiences as someone who moved out of a small town, and then you go back and it's like, oh yeah, like all the girls who I thought were cute in high school are now like harassed by all like the shitty dudes that stay in the small town just to be jerks. It's
yeah, and some of the people that you knew back then, you know, they've all settled down in some way.
Yeah,
and you feel almost better about yourself that you didn't stay, type things. And I don't mean that as a bad thing necessarily. I mean that as like, you know, the world's bigger than your hometown. And Clark, what I like about Clark is that he doesn't rub that in Lana's face. Instead, he asks her to come with him, essentially, to the outside world. Is like essentially what he's saying. He's like, you have a chance to just leave. You don't have to be here. And she's you know, she's like, well, I have the house and I have Ricky, and like she gives excuses for why she can't leave. You know,
yeah, she has her kid Ricky, and then the Buster the dog,
and so she's just like, it feels like she's stuck there of her own accord. And what's great about Clark is that he, even when he's like hitting on her, essentially, he never once is like, you should come live with me. He's like, no, you can come to Smallville, or you can come to Metropolis. You can call me. I can help you out. We'll figure out what to do from there, and then, you know, you can stay in Metropolis. If something happens, something happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, type thing. And then, you know, she has an ex-husband, or she's a widow, I think is the idea, right?
No, he left, but not because of the mayonnaise. He loved mayonnaise.
Oh, okay. I thought he died. I don't remember. I thought for some reason I thought he died.
Donald, right? It was. Yeah, I think his name was Donald.
And she pawned off her ring, which for some reason comes back. I don't really understand why they bother doing that, especially if it turns out he left. It wouldn't make any sense for why she would want that. And then, but there's a lot of great sequences within Smallville that Superman ends up doing. The plant is a great example of that. There's
Yeah,
a
that chemical plant.
yeah, and it's this fun sequence. Honestly, like it's legitimately like a very fun sequence of him saving these people. Turns out there's a lot more lines in the extended version of it, and they're like small lines. It's not like whole sequences. It's like him talking to this guy. He's like, "Oh, what can I do?" He's like, "Well, I need you to help those people because we think those fumes might be dangerous, but we're not really sure." Is what he ends up telling them. Like they're throwaway lines that don't make it. They just make it more dangerous than what's already happening, which is already pretty dangerous to begin with. And he does something that fucking the CW took
They just
from this.
borrow the exact same thing. Another thing, I never connected those dots until you mentioned it to me, and I was like, God damn, you're right. It is the exact same thing.
It's the exact same situation. Is that the plant has something, or it's kind of the same situation. There's a part of the plant that is this setup, and it's a MacGuffin, as it turns out, a series of acid containers that are harmless at a certain temperature, but when they heat up, they can cause this massive, dangerous cloud of acid, as well as just spew everywhere, type of thing. And so he tells everybody, "Hey, I need you guys to go over there while I'm saving these people, so we can take care of this at the same time." But then an explosion happens and all the water turns off or something. I'm not really certain why the water turns off from the explosion, but it does. And so he freezes the top of a lake that's nearby. I forget the name. They give the name for the lake, and then he takes that top part and just drops it on this plant, which causes it to rain water on it, and everything's saved. Although why he didn't just use his freeze breath on the acid, who knows?
That would have been a lot easier, I would think. But
It
I
would have.
always,
But I think it's because he stops the whole fire. I think is the idea why he ends up doing it that way instead.
I always enjoyed the chemical plant sequence though in this movie, because also like where I grew up in my little small town, it was right next to an aluminum plant, but it had like the very similar kind of industrial architecture. It also had like a lake next to it that the power plant used. It was kind of weird. It's like always warm water in there, but
I don't know why every small town has a lake in it, because my small town had a lake in it too.
well, ours was next to a power plant, like the one in The Simpsons. So we would always joke that there would be like three-eyed fish and stuff like that in the water.
That would have been funny. Mine was just next to the border. Like there was, I think, it connected to the border itself. But there was an Air Force base. We didn't have a chemical plant, as far as I know. I didn't look too deeply into it. But yeah, but like as I mentioned, Superman and Lois did the exact same thing. Not like instead of like dropping it though, he holds it above it, so as it melts, the water lands on it.
It
and
was
it's
better
actually
effect.
it's a really fun homage to a scene
Yeah.
one of the only scenes that works in this movie.
And it also has the sergeant from Aliens is the fire chief.
That's right. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, so I always love seeing that casting there. So this came out 3 years before Aliens, so it's pretty close
Yes.
to the same time.
The other thing is that since Lois isn't there, Jimmy has to be the one who gets themselves in trouble.
And that's so weird that Jimmy Olsen is going to go with Clark to go, I'm going to go photograph your high school reunion. And then like this happens. And he's like, I guess I'm not going anymore. Bye.
Yeah, it breaks his leg. And he doesn't even keep the pictures from the fire.
It was just an odd choice. Like, what was the point of even like sending Jimmy to this chemical plant?
He was they didn't. He just happened to be there. It wasn't that they sent him to the plant.
Right,
but it's weird that they sent him to Smallville in general, though.
But like when they're writing the script, like why did the screenplay writers David Newman and Leslie Newman? Why did they? Okay, we'll have Jimmy like go along for like the first 10% of the trip, and then he'll break his leg and not get to go. Like I don't know, I don't get it.
It didn't make a lot of sense. But there's a lot of use of his powers in this movie. It was the other thing I kind of liked about it. Which is because he actually uses his X-ray vision a lot. Although the effects for the X-ray vision and everything is really weird. It's very 80s.
But I think if you compare a lot of the effects in this movie to the first two, they hold up. I much prefer Superman 4 to Superman 3, but I don't know if I can say like the effects hold up as much.
Oh, that's for good reason. But we'll talk about that.
Right? Yeah, smaller budget, but
we always keep going back to Gus Gorman. He's tasked with controlling the weather because of coffee. I think that was the idea.
Right. So instead of having Lex Luthor with some real estate scheme. Instead of trying to take over the West Coast or own Australia, we have a new villain who is trying to monopolize the coffee racket. Or he just says like Colombia won't play ball with me. He never says like the details of like what they won't do. But
yeah, he's just like, they won't sell to me or something, I guess. And so he is another instance of computers. Well, how do we stop it? Computers. The same thing that we. That's the answer to everything that he does.
The computers are the MacGuffin of this movie.
And then the weirdest thing happens. There's a subplot in the movie about bingo, which is that the Daily Planet has a bingo contest that sends one of the employees and his wife to Colombia, which then they get caught in the attack from this satellite called Vulcan.
Yeah, that was fun for the Star Trek nerds out there. Or Gundam nerds. You have like Vulcan cannons.
Exactly. And so it just cuts to them at a wedding. They get assaulted essentially by the church because it falls apart over them. And then it cuts to Gus Gorman and them on the roof of this guy Webster's building. That's like a ski. I don't really know why. It's a ski. It's a fake ski section that has the smallest rails imaginable. And instead of getting a great sequence of Superman saving Columbia, Richard Pryor explains it. And then it cuts randomly into Superman doing the things he mentions. By the way, the deleted scenes, it extends that sequence to an excruciating point.
It does not need to be extended.
There's a point where he says in that one where he's like, "Well, Superman does this super slurp or some shit," and I'm just sitting there going like, I can't even finish this deleted scene. This is so painful.
But that's like a perfect example of what Richard Lester wanted to do. Like he wanted to have a Richard Pryor comedy. You think like if Richard Donner had directed this movie, we would have had like these beautiful sequences with John Williams music playing and Superman doing all the things that Pryor describes. Did we see like a little glimpse of him, flying up the tornado to stop the tornado? But it wasn't like the big cool action sequence that you would think the Superman audience would show up to the theater to see.
Yeah, and it's Richard Pryor doing a shtick. He takes off this table cover, puts it over himself like as a cape, and then at the end of the whole sequence, they talk again about like, well, we need to get rid of Superman. But the sequence ends in the stupidest way just one of the stupidest things, which is that Richard Pryor falls off the roof of this building, but he survives because of skis.
Yeah, because he could ski down the slanted part of the building. As dumb as that is, I will admit, when I watched this movie as a kid, I always thought like, that looks so fun. I want to grow up and have a big ass tall building like that I can ski off of, like Richard Pryor in Superman 3.
And then he just lands in traffic and just slowly walks away. And you're like, wasn't that funny? And like the entire movie feels like it ends with sequences that have Richard Lester like looking at the audience going, was that funny? Tell me it was funny. And then it just continues, and it just keeps cutting back between Gus and Clark. Because again, even the bad guys aren't in this movie as much as Richard Pryor is in this movie. Because I didn't even bring up how he hacks Vulcan. He gets
yes,
he gets Brad drunk, and like he's sent to Smallville to break into a subsidiary that he owns to somehow make him not connect to him, which doesn't make any sense. And he breaks in by getting the security guard, who happens to be Brad, super drunk, which is also extended apparently in the deleted scenes. And I didn't even try to watch it because I didn't want to. and then has this comedy bit of him trying to access the computer, and then has the weirdest comedy setup of him just fucking over a bunch of people that goes on forever, is what it feels like.
The traffic lights.
Yes, the traffic lights.
Every time I see a stoplight that has like the little signal of the person walking across the street, I always think, to this day, I always think of this part of Superman 3 where we see Gus fucked up the computers so bad he made like the little cartoon traffic light people fight each other in the traffic lights.
They fight each other. There's one thing I didn't notice until I did this rewatch that we're doing. By the way, there's a sequence during that moment where somebody is at an ATM and money starts coming out of it, and he starts grabbing it over and over again. He's the same actor who played the deputy in Superman 2, but with a mustache.
From East Houston, Idaho.
Yes, it's the same actor. He just has a mustache now, and so he's then he just starts putting money in his pants. Like, and by that pants, I don't mean his pockets. He literally puts it in his crotch at one point, and that's the bit. I don't know what else to say about that.
I guess Richard Lester thought it was funny.
And then they decide that that Clark is using his clout with Superman to gain favor with Ricky. Lana and Ricky take advantage of Clark so bad in this movie when it comes to that, because he's just I want to get Ricky Superman's autograph. He's like, I know him. I'll get him his autograph, and he does. And he's like, well, he got ahead of himself, and now he wants him to come to his birthday party. He's like, well, I guess I'll tell Superman to come to your birthday.
Does he really want him to come to the birthday party, or did they just tell him that to get Superman to come back to town so they could congratulate him for saving Ricky in the cornfield?
No, because what happens is that he tells everyone, and then the town takes over this kid's birthday party. To the point where I forgot about this, which is that when there's the table where they're all sitting, there's random presents aligned along it that I guess the other townspeople who are on stage have, that I guess are supposed to be for Ricky.
Okay, I didn't realize that was his birthday party, but wow, like I guess like if you're friends with Superman, you have like the biggest birthday party in town.
Yeah, so Smallville takes over a small child's birthday party to make a congratulating key to the city for Superman. They completely take over this kid's party, and it's so weird. And then but before that, there's Webster has a great idea, which is that he's gonna have his lab that he happens to have. I guess I don't know what the fuck this guy does for a living. That
he's in the coffee industry apparently.
Recreate kryptonite using the properties of it if he knows what it's made out of. And then one of the most disgusting things that I've ever seen still, that it makes, or not so much disgusting as it's like it's a product of its time that makes you wonder why people still smoked, which is the moment where Richard Pryor goes, there's a moment that says it's unknown. There's an unknown element because it's an alien rock. Instead of deciding to tell them it's unknown, he looks at his cigarette box and it says it has tar in his cigarettes. Doesn't question the fact that tar is an ingredient in something he's been putting in his body this entire time. And just makes fake kryptonite out of this thing, and then decides to show up with it at this birthday party / key to the city sequence, in one of the most uncomfortable sequences I've ever seen in my life, which is Richard Pryor showing up and doing like a Patton impression or something.
Yeah,
that goes on forever.
He's riffing on the George C. Scott Patton movie, but yeah, because we get Richard Pryor like master of disguise in this. He's also the salesman, I guess, or whoever the hell who showed up at the building where Brad was the security guard.
Yeah, he buys one of the suits, and apparently that's in Smallville, because there's a moment where Clark accidentally hits him with the car door and just tells him sorry, and then that's it. But he walks by a store that has these like really shitty, or not shitty, these really like Midwestern is the best way I can put it, suits.
Yeah, colorful business attire.
Yes, and so he buys a suit from it. That's the implication, is he buys one of the suits from it, and then pretends to be a salesman that's supposed to install something for somebody, and then when he asks him what is it, he just opens up a trunk full of alcohol. So I don't even know what he's pretending to install, by the way.
He's doing it's like when black comedians do like a white voice. He's like, he's like, talking about their boss. He's like, he's going to hang our butts against the wall and like
Yes.
stuff like that. So
It's like it's that scene from or not that scene. It's like that one movie. I don't remember the name of it. Where they have a white person voice, quote unquote. But he does that.
Sorry to bother you.
Sorry to bother you. It's
yeah.
Richard Pryor. Sorry to bother you voice, and so he gets in using that, and then secret it, and then he somehow does it again, pretending to be a general who shows up randomly, who decides to be like, you know what, for saving chemicals, because he goes on this long rant about chemicals and chairs and how
the
it
importance
stops
of American plastic. Yeah,
is so fucking weird. It's not funny in any way.
Cold War. It was very like at the time, that was the thing with like gaps. Like we can't have like a plastic quality gap with the Soviets. We have to have the best in the world.
And then he's like, as a token of our appreciation, I'm going to give Superman a green rock. That again, Superman
looks like kryptonite.
Superman doesn't question this. He's just like, cool. It doesn't even occur to him it's supposed to be kryptonite. He's just like, neat. Is like, I guess he's like, yeah, rock, and then just hangs on to it.
I guess the Christopher Reeve Superman, though, his sunstone crystals from Krypton, a lot of those are green and kind of look like kryptonite. So I guess he was like, okay, green rocks aren't necessarily always bad. Maybe this is going to be okay. But
honestly, I think he was just dumbfounded by what was going on. He was already like, I came for a birthday party.
Yeah.
I'm getting the key to the city. This guy just showed up, talked about plastics for 10 minutes, and then gave me a rock. So I guess, hooray. He's like, he doesn't know what to, like, Christopher Reeve almost looks like he doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing in that sequence. And it's to the point, and then it cuts to like, he's like disappointed the rock doesn't work. He calls his boss, or he calls Webster to be like, hey, it didn't work, unknown or some shit. And then the rock affects him when he's hanging out with Lana. And one of the creepiest sequences of any superhero movie I've ever seen, by the way.
It turns him into naughty Superman. I do like the way Annette O'Toole plays Lana in that scene when like she's at first like she kind of seems like, oh, she's kind of into this more carefree Superman, and then she goes from that to being like really like kind of scared and unnerved by him.
Well, because it happens so fast, because he shows up, and at first it's like a normal like, hey, let me make you lunch because you showed up. He's like, that'd be great. I'm happy to hang out because for one, she doesn't know that he's Clark, but he's like, I want to hang out with my friend. And then it starts affecting him. And then he goes into like almost like Dennis mode where he's just like, because of the implications, Lana, type thing. And then she's like, well, there's an accident that happened. Go help them. And he's like, well, I'm in no rush, is literally what he says. And that's the moment that Lana's like, I'm sorry, what did you say? Type thing. And what I like about that sequence, though, is that Clark does snap out of it after a while. Like, it's not an immediate thing. And so he does eventually go, he basically has that moment of like, oh, wait, what am I doing? I need to go over there to find out. And then he misses, they luckily saved the guy, apparently, but he misses it. And then I guess it just goes downhill from there for him.
Yeah, we get the montage of naughty Superman.
And it has my favorite joke in the entire movie, which is the not the Leaning Tower of Pisa one. That one is a giant dick move. Don't get me wrong. But the biggest dick move he does in the movie is the Olympic torch sequence, because of the fact that he's already full-blown evil at this point. And he does it for no reason. Like there's no explanation for why Superman's there. He decides he's going to go there and just fuck with him. And blow out the Olympic torch just as the guy's going to light the thing. And the guy looks so sad. He was so excited, and Superman's just like, fuck you, and then flies off.
I just realized that must have been the 1980 Olympics. They would have had the Olympics in 1980 because the movie has to be set in 1980 because they said it was his 15-year high school reunion, and then when we see the reunion, it says class of 1965.
And it's all footage probably from that Olympics, too,
right.
that they had on them. Because they actually show a lot of footage that is clearly like one of these Olympic events. And then one of the weirdest things happens in the movie, which is that so computers again happens, where Webster decides he wants to control oil. Again, I don't know what this guy's business is. Apparently, it's oil and coffee and scientific people who can make kryptonite. Who he's like, I'm going to control oil, so we're going to use computers to make a bunch of tankers go and to stay in the same place. And because I'm guessing all these other ships are electronic, and there's only one that's like not. And so that one, so what happens is that the blonde lady seduces Superman into destroying this tanker to keep oil from happening to Metropolis. So there's a gas shortage, which is a real thing that has happened, I think, even around this time.
Yeah, in the late 70s.
So I think that's what they took inspiration from. And then Superman actually sleeps with that lady.
Yeah.
Like, there's no world, I feel like, even in this timeline, by timeline I mean now, I make it sound like there's a multiverse thing. I don't see that being a thing that would happen in any Superman movie, even now. I don't even think Zack Snyder would have done that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think if someone tried to do it, I think like DC would be like, "Well, do you really want to?" Like, let's pump the brakes on that. Let's think about that.
You think they would have done that then? Superman was even squeakier clean then than he is now. Like, how did they get away with that?
But you keep in mind the last two movies were big commercial hits, so they probably were thinking like, okay, the Salkins know what they're doing. Yeah, let's make a third massive blockbuster. I'm sure it's going to be another winner. And imagine going into this movie without outlook and then getting this.
I will say this about Evil Superman, though, is that I love the design of Evil Superman, which is that he's wearing a much darker shade of blue, and red as well. Like his suit is just like it looks like it's been run through his Zack Snyder filter.
Yeah, it slowly gets more darker and muted. Like it starts off as like, okay, you have Christopher Reeve Superman, and then it turns into like Brandon Routh, and then it finally gets around to like Henry Cavill colors.
Yeah, and then his hair does it's almost what Parallax hair does, which is there's this gray side of sides on his head, and he has like 5 o'clock shadow almost. Like it's like subtle, but it's there, and he has this very angry demeanor. Christopher Reeve actually gives his all as being a crazy person. There's that line right at one after he destroys that bar where he walks out and he just goes, "What are you looking at?" Like, and he does it so well that even I'm like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, he's scary. No, like when he is like full on like rageful evil Superman, it is scary to look at.
By the way, for people who don't know this, there's a Todd McFarlane Superman 78 figure that got released not that long ago that has a variant that is the evil Superman from Superman 3.
Oh, cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, because it's the gold label version or whatever, I think is the name of it. So it's got the darker colors. It's more expensive because it's supposed to be a variant. And that's funny because one guy didn't know that. He had bought the figure and he's like, I think I got the wrong one, and I'm upset because he wanted the normal one, not knowing that he got the rarer one.
But I just trying to find things to compliment in this movie. I do like a lot of the special effects with the like all the evil Superman stuff. Like when he's using like the heat vision on the mirror and the bar and like all that stuff like looks pretty cool. And then like the junkyard fight, I think it's actually like quite dumb, but it's all shot pretty well. Like it's all good looking footage of Superman versus Clark Kent. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. I was mentioned I watched this with my girlfriend. It's my favorite part of the movie actually is the duel between Clark and insane Superman. There's no explanation for it. It's just that he starts losing his mind or something, lands in the middle of this thing. Everybody leaves because they're like, "Oh, that dude's fucking crazy now." And then a Clark Kent just walks out of him. And it's not just like, like a human, like he has all of his powers. He just doesn't use them for some reason. And then they get into a fight. But like you said, it's so well shot because you can barely see the seams is the best way I can put it. Because in a lot of movies around the time, when they did like the duplicate person thing, sometimes you could see like when they were standing next to each other, you would see like almost like a line between it because it's the frames, because they used to split the frames and then just sort of put them together so they could talk to each other. But they filmed it in a way where every time they would cut to one of the other ones, it would be from the behind of whoever was the guy that was happening.
Mhm.
And then in sequences where they had to move around where they couldn't do that, they shot it from afar. So, like for instance, there's the part where he grabs Clark and he's about to throw him or something, and they shoot it like the angle of it's like much farther, so you don't focus on their faces as much. You focus on the bodies and the movements of what's happening, to the point where you forget that they're the same person, kind of thing. Like you just assume that they literally like they somehow have two Christopher Reeves there fighting each other to the death in a junkyard.
Yeah, no, it holds up. It's very seamless. All
My
of
only
that.
issue is the way it ends, because he chokes him out. Like just kind of
It is
randomly.
anticlimactic, yeah. And it's also kind of corny. Like it's very Richard Lester, like the big pool of acid. There's like a sign that's like warning toxic acid or whatever, stuff like that. But it's very cartoony. This movie is very cartoony. Like Richard Pryor, like dressing up in all these different disguises. That's like a straight up like Bugs Bunny move,
Well, not only that, the most cartoony thing happens to me in the third act, which is that right after Superman, becomes normal Superman again, he goes to confront Webster, and he's told, hey, we knew you were going to come back. Come here to this thing, because Richard Pryor decides that instead of getting paid, he wants them to make a computer that he made designs of by writing on a series of napkins, cigarette boxes, and just random shit. And by the way, they don't like take all these things and put them into like blueprints. When they're making it, it literally cuts to the guys like looking at these fucking napkins, being like, "Where does this go? I think it goes over there," type thing. Like for some reason, they never like make it a normal blueprint, which is actually like hinted at because of when Richard Pryor's doing something, he's like, "This isn't supposed to be here; it's supposed to be over there," type thing. I think the implication is that them doing that is what causes what happens in the third act, but I'll get to that in a second. But what's cartoony about that sequence is that not only the balloons thing, because they fucking fly down in balloons, is that when they're fighting Superman with rockets, it becomes this video game sequence that has these like animated Supermans flying around, and it has a score and everything. And it's such a cartoon thing to do with zero explanation as to why this machine does this. It's just doing this, and that's just how it works, I guess.
Yeah, totally unnecessary and doesn't make sense. But if there was an arcade game in 1983 that looked like that, those would have been some top tier graphics.
Oh, I would have played that game. Don't get me wrong.
I would play that now. I like the 8-bit Superman you see at the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun things that kind of happen, but it's all very cartoony. And then like even the giant, I guess it's a missile. It looks more like a ship because it even has a window on it that they shoot at him, and it hits him, but it doesn't. It knocks him out for like what, a minute, probably at most. And they're like, "Yeah, we got him." It's like he just gets back up. And then the machine is just like, the other thing is that the machine can do whatever you want it to do. It's another example of the computer can do anything because it's a computer, because it's a smart computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so the implication, as I mentioned, is that somehow the machine is even able to make kryptonite using its super intelligence, because it doesn't need to know. It now knows what the unknown is somehow. And then Richard Pryor has a change of heart, I guess, because reasons.
But he's a likable kid. I don't know. Maybe I just like Richard Pryor. But even like when I was watching this as a kid, I always thought like the Pryor character was oh, he's an all right guy. Like I never felt like he was like what. It's like when he tells Superman when he's like, oh, I'm not part of this group. I'm not one of these bad guys.
Yeah, because the movie wants you to think that Richard Pryor is he's just a hired help type thing, and honestly, he is for most of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't until when they're like, by the way, we want you to kill Superman, and he just doesn't object to it, then I'm like, no, you're a bad guy.
Yeah, no, that is messed up. He built a computer for the purpose of killing Superman.
And so and then he's like, "Oh my god, my computer's killing Superman." I'm like, dude, you wanted to kill Superman not even like an hour ago. But now that it's happening in front of you, you feel bad about it, I guess. And then he stops it by, which again, this is a part that doesn't make any sense, is he unscrews the screw and the whole thing turns off.
It's frustrating to know that we got this when there was an idea to like to have like imagine if that was like the third act of this movie and he has to go up against like Brainiac has this like machine fortress in the Grand Canyon. You know, that would have been so much cooler than what we ended up with. The moment when the sister gets like merged with the computer, like what, like assimilated into the Borg or whatever the hell that was, like that freaked me the hell out when I was a kid.
Oh, I had nightmares about that scene for years. And in fact, if you watch, there's a series on YouTube that people should know, or not should know, but I'm assuming people know about, which is do you know what pitch meeting is?
Yeah.
There's so every time I watched one of these movies, I went and I watched the pitch meeting for them. And so I watched the pitch meeting for Superman 3 out of her, and he has a great line in it, which he's like, "By the way, we're gonna make a scene where it's gonna give a whole new generation of kids nightmares." And they're like, "What?" It's like, "That's right, whole new generation of kids, just pure nightmares."
Well,
and I was
worked.
just like, "It's true." I was traumatized by that as a kid, and then when I watched it as an adult, I'm like, "Why was I so scared of this sequence?" And I think it's purely because of the way she screams. It's the way she screams that really sells that scene more than what's actually happening in that scene. And then I guess he leaves and gets the acid and stops them because the machine doesn't find the acid dangerous yet.
Yeah,
it's not heated up.
It's weird. Like he has to explain that to Richard Pryor later. You know.
Yes. It's like him explaining it to the on. It's like the Salkinds were like, I don't think people understand where he got this from, but it's obvious where he got it from if you really pay attention to it. But he's just like, well, how did you beat it? It's like, well, and then he explains exactly what I just explained, verbatim, basically. And then he just lets Richard Pryor go. He doesn't even leave him in a normal. He leaves him in a random coal mine. For some reason, like there's no real explanation for why he leaves him in a coal mine, I guess, other than it being the nearest.
Because he needed coal to make the diamond for Lana, so he's like, well, I might as well just like drop this guy off here, try to get him a job.
Actually, you know what? He does mention to him, "Did you want me to take you?"
Yeah, he does offer to take him all the way to Metropolis.
I think maybe the idea was that he was just gonna get the coal and then leave. But then he doesn't do that. And then the weirdest sequence happens, in my opinion, because I feel like there's no closure, which is that Richard Pryor just goes, "Yeah, I'm not going to take that job, and I'm just going to fucking walk to a bus station." And that's the last you see of Richard Pryor.
Do you know why, though? I think that they were thinking, like, we might bring him back for Superman 4. I think, like, they were like, this character is going to be such a hit. Everyone's going to love him. We'll bring him back for the next one.
That makes the most sense. But I don't even think there's a deleted scene that shows any other closure other than, and then he left. The end. You don't even see the Websters get arrested. He makes a throwaway line. He's like, they're gonna have to talk to the police, and because they're all alive.
Yeah,
like
not your problem now.
I thought the sister was gonna die, but no, she's just back to normal once the machines exploded. And then he gives Lana this giant fucking diamond ring. Brad randomly shows up again. Brad is a psychopath. He follows Lana to Metropolis.
Yeah, tracked down her hotel room and then like showed up like clearly drunk.
Yeah, his whole arc is he's a crazy alcoholic, and then his comeuppance is that he just fucking he falls onto a cart and then like flies out of the room or something like that.
His comeuppance is Richard Lester slapstick.
I assume she would have gotten a fucking restraining order on this guy at this point because that was a crazy person thing to do. Like, what was his plan there?
Well, he's wearing a suit. Maybe he was gonna propose to Lana, and then that's why he was like so pissed off when he was like, "Oh, I hate you, Kent." When he sees him on his knees putting this ring on her hand,
it's so weird. And then the final scene I kind of like, which is the not the final scene, but the final sequence, which is them at the Daily Planet. Lana's now Perry's assistant, and Lois shows up, and it turns out while she went on her vacation, she got kidnapped.
Yeah, I love that though. It's like Lois has crazy adventures like on her own. Like if Superman's not there to save her, like she'll figure it out on her own.
That's one of the funniest things. Is she gets kidnapped and Superman does nothing about it. Clark is so busy trying to bone Lana Lang, he doesn't even hear about Lois's kidnapping.
But part of the reason why I do appreciate the Lana scenes in this movie so much, and I'll defend that aspect of the movie, is that it is the Christopher Reeve Clark Kent not being the butt of the joke. It's like, oh, he actually is not just like this clumsy goofball. He is like a cool dude. He's a nice guy, and he would be like a like a good partner for this woman.
Also, it's great that he writes the story about it, which is that he comes back and he romanticizes the idea of the small town still, but that's so Clark Kent kind of thing. Like the way me and you talk about our small towns, like we're not so much antagonistic about it, but it's more like I would never want to go back type of thing.
It's more like the Superman and Lois version, where you go back and you're like, oh wow, this is like a shithole full of meth heads.
Yes, exactly. Whereas in this thing, Clark is more like he still very much loves Smallville. He's still very much like, this is where I came from. Everybody there is still very nice to and a person you would want to meet and shake your hand type of thing, except for Brad, of course. And then there's that line he writes where he's just like, and the prettiest girl in school is still the prettiest girl type of thing. And you're just like, there's something sweet about how innocent his view of Smallville still is, even then, that he hasn't lived there in like a decade,
in 15 years.
And I find that fascinating, that especially again, as we both have come from what people would consider small towns type thing. Like my city was, its population was like, I think 30,000.
Mine was 5,000.
Yeah, exactly. There's like, the big, I didn't really understand what a big town was until you get into places where there's, triple digits in the 1,000 part of it. And the only reason ours was as big as it was is there was an Air Force base type of thing. If that Air Force base was that town would not have been very big type situation, and the Border Patrol. But there are reasons why that population is probably even only like that. And so, but we have like I said, we, as people from smaller towns, our view on these things are much different. I think it's one of the reasons why me and you get like connect to Superman more than some people we know.
It definitely is part of what makes him so relatable. Like when people say like you can't relate to Superman, I'm like he's like so much more relatable than like like the billionaire who like was raised by his employee,
yeah, and who also knows every form of karate type of thing.
Like I can't relate to that, but
yeah, exactly. And so and you you get the sense that he's still an outsider even when he's wherever he is, even from the story. It's just that, and then like Superman 3 has so many issues. It's my least favorite Superman movie. I still hate this movie with a passion, don't get me wrong, but I still find things to like about it, type of thing. But that's just because I'm a fan of Superman, I think, at the end of the day. And Christopher Reeve still gives it the whole way through.
Yeah. And Annette O'Toole.
And Annette O'Toole, of course. Actually, everybody who's like the original cast still gives their all. Like even Margot Kidder and her small appearances. The same with is Jackie Cooper, right, who plays the chief.
Yeah, and Mark McClure as Jimmy.
Everybody else is kind of just. I feel like they were hired more for comedy chops, like including the guy they sent to Columbia.
But those are like the people that Donner hired, so
yes, exactly.
They were good.
They were all good, and then there's even. Was there any? There's no Fortress stuff in this one at all, isn't there?
No. Yeah, this has the least. There's nothing like Kryptonian, I guess, other than like they mentioned the kryptonite and make the synthetic kryptonite. But
yeah, they mentioned where Krypton probably was, and they scan it, and that's all they do to get the elements of what makes kryptonite. It's the least involving about Krypton in the entire series, because even 4 has a lot of Fortress stuff in it. But I don't know what else to say about Superman 3 other than it's not a good movie. It's not funny for the majority of it. It doesn't know what it wants to be. In my opinion, this movie is ashamed to be a superhero movie.
Totally, yeah, and that used to be, much more common than, like these days, and like the post, like X-Men, Spider-Man, MCU world. It's like you can
Yeah,
you can
and
embrace that a lot more now.
I've there's a lot of stuff about this movie I didn't know about in the background stuff. One is that they almost titled this movie Superman versus Superman. And the only reason they didn't was for some reason the directors of Kramer versus Kramer threatened to sue them.
Yeah, which that seems weird. Like I don't think you would win that lawsuit, but
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, according I'm on right now. I'm on Wikipedia mostly because of the reception part. There's so many like really bad, like scathing reviews on this one. This is one of my favorites, which is from Christopher John and from Aries Magazine. It says compared to the first film in the series, everything about Superman 3 is a joke, a harsh, cruel joke played on all the people who wanted to see more of the Superman they saw from the other movies.
I mean that's not inaccurate. So
It's not. It was also nominated for 2 Razzies for Worst Supporting Actor and Worst Musical Score, and and just like, everybody hated this fucking movie. Like, there's so many people who just because that's the thing about this movie is that it's like if you had made it's like if Sam Raimi made Spider-Man 1 and 2 still, but instead of Spider-Man 3, we got like Elektra like right after that. You know what I mean? Like that type of quality. Like
yeah, if you went from Spider-Man 2 to the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yes, actually that's a good way of putting it. Although people like Spider-Man Amazing Spider-Man 2 for some reason. But that's a great example though still. But it's there's a drop in quality that I don't think any other movie has to this day. Another way of putting it is like if you watch the Dark Knight trilogy, but instead of the Dark Knight Rises, Batman and Robin was the third movie.
Yes, no, that is the best way to frame it.
Because you get 2 movies that take its character very seriously, and then you get the stupidest fucking thing you've ever seen, just out of nowhere. And which is why Superman 3 is still to me to this day the worst Superman movie ever made.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with that. But I know a lot of people really hate on Superman 4, and you and I are of the opinion that Superman 4 is actually very enjoyable.
Yes, and there's a lot about Superman 4 that I will talk about when we talk about it, but I will always say this is that at the end of the day, Superman 3 doesn't want to be a superhero movie, but it has the budget, where Superman 4 wants to be a superhero movie, but it just doesn't have the budget to do what it wants to do.
Yeah, that's a very unfair but accurate way of framing it. I don't have anything else to say about Superman 3 other than I'm much more excited to talk about Superman 4 with you in the near future. And also, we're going to have to talk about like this trailer at some point. So,
Yes, we'll talk about the trailer before we probably talk about the movie. Because by the time the trailer comes out, it's going to be a while till the next time, or not a while, but you know what I mean. Like the trailer's coming out after we're recording this one.
yeah. So
And
we'll have some trailer talk soon, and then Superman 4, and then we're done with Christopher Reeve.
Yes,
Kind of
and
sad.
then we're done with the Christopher Reeve starring movies, but we're not
Right.
technically done with the Donnerverse. Technically,
Right, because Bryan Singer was like, "I'm going to continue that," and we have Superman Returns. So after Superman 4, we'll get the attempt at continuing the other version of Superman 3, I guess.
yeah. The weird thing about the Donnerverse is how far out it extended, even past Christopher Reeve, and even past that movie, but it still happened. But we'll talk about that when that comes up.
Yeah, looking forward to that, and then eventually we'll have a James Gunn directed Superman film to talk about. So
Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
before we close off, anything else Superman related that's recent and relevant that you wanna mention?
I'm trying to remember what came out comic book wise. Oh, the Dan Slott Superman run is going to start very soon.
Yes.
If you guys hadn't done it, there was a free comic book day Superman thing that is basically the beginning of it. It's and I liked it a lot. It's one of those times where I actually am excited about. It's not because I don't like. It's not that I don't like Dan Slott. It's just that when Dan Slott is limited in certain things that he can do, I think he actually makes better stuff because of it. Because he can't make like gigantic changes to status quo type things sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why I'm actually legitimately looking really looking forward to Superman Unlimited, is because when he's allowed to do like fun stuff without having to I know it's not going to be another Bendis type thing where it's
Yes.
not going to.
No, it'll be better than Bendis. I know that.
I know like Dan Slott's not going to show up and be like, by the way, Jimmy turned out to be like an alien the whole time or something fucking weird. Like things are going to be as normal as he can, as far as that he can extend, but he can't make like large swag like giant changes to stuff. So I'm very, very excited. I would also still say Absolute Superman, the latest one, absolutely horrifying.
I haven't read issue 7 yet, but
it's really good, and it's one of those horrifying versions of Brainiac I've ever seen in my life.
Nice. So I'm looking forward to checking that out, and I'm also very eager for the Slot stuff. So we'll be able to compare notes on that in the future as well. But we can go ahead and sign off now, and until next time, as always, keep it super, y'all.